There weren't many that saw the 2024 season coming for the Indiana Hoosiers. Certainly, Kurt Signetti definitely saw that coming. He was obviously orchestrating one of the greatest turnarounds that we've seen in college football. But in a way, this year could be a little bit more difficult than it was last year. We'll talk more why in just a little bit. But we're going to do a deep dive into Indiana Hoosiers. And when you look at what we did last year, this was a team that we didn't talk about a ton. We did not talk about this program in the Big Ten. We did not talk about them in college football. We knew there was excitement with Signetti coming to campus and bringing some quality talent with him, including some coaches. But nobody, and I repeat, nobody saw 11-2 coming. An incredible turnaround led by a guy who clearly knows how to win football games. I don't think we can doubt him any longer if you were. And I think that this is a team that is going to be solid once again. Now, 11-2 might not be a possibility, but we also didn't see last year coming. So maybe they do have more tricks up their sleeve. Now, this is a team that was portal heavy last year, and they still brought in plenty of talent via the portal this year. You also kind of had to with the amount of talent you lost in your starting lineup. You lost a number of big time players, most notably Curtis Rourke at quarterback. You lost CJ West, James Carpenter, Jalen Walker. You lost a number of players that were big time impact players on both sides of the ball. But again, you kind of knew that with what you had coming into the program. You knew how much eligibility they had left, and you were very aware of the fact that some of these guys were short-term commodities. And they just reloaded in the transfer portal once again. They did not waste any time revamping this roster with what they lost. Now, I will say that they did not have to bring in nearly as many quality players as they did last year. You did not have to raise the ceiling as much as you did last year, but they still brought in some players that are going to make a big impact. Fernando Mendoza is going to be one of those guys that we are excited to see. You saw what happened with Curtis Rourke, and people are hoping that the Cal transfer can do the same thing. Roman Hemby comes in from Maryland to be the running back for this group, and it's a running back room that I think is pretty solid, pretty deep. Mekhi Jackson, Jonathan Brady. You bring in Pat Coogan from Notre Dame. You bring in Khalil Benson from Colorado. On defense, you don't have to bring in as many starters, but you did get Kellen Wyatt. You bring in Jose Wheeler. I think that, I'm not sure, actually, Wheeler, I'm not sure how to say his first name, to be completely honest. So if I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. All I know is this dude can play. He's going to be a big-time impact player to replace a CJ West or a James Carpenter, and that'll be really fun to watch. You also bring in Lewis Moore from Ole Miss. You bring in Devin Boykin from NC State. Then you bring in plenty of quality depth behind them as well. We'll dive more into those specific guys when we get to their positions. But as you can see, this was a program that, once again, was not afraid to hit the portal. They were not afraid to bring in talent, to bring in competition, and ensure that this is a team that will not be satisfied with 11-2, especially with how the season ended. There's no way that Kurt Signetti is going to let this team get away with that. For how good of a season they had, the finish was the most disappointing part, obviously. But how they lost definitely gives this team another chip on their shoulder to potentially do it again. Now, it's going to start with the quarterback position. Curtis Rourke was a tremendous get for this program. Bringing him in was clearly a home run, and they're hoping they have another one in Fernando Mendoza. When you play really well at Cal, I think that people notice for sure. Over 3,000 yards for him, 16 touchdowns. He is a little mobile. He ran the ball 87 times last year for the Golden Bears. So you won't see that as much from him, but you can use his legs when needed. Passing is really where he's going to thrive. Now, he does have to find some chemistry with some of these wide receivers, with the tight end position. You do have some new pieces coming at wide receivers, so that might take some time. But the guys that we're going to discuss today will make his job a lot easier. And if he kind of does what Rourke did, which is play with a ton of confidence, just keep it smooth, keep everything cool, calm, and collected, they'll find ways to move the ball down the field. And Mendoza, I think, is just scratching the surface on what he can do. And with the talent he has coming back around him and coming in via the transfer portal, you feel really good about what he could do in 2025. Now, you do bring Grant Wilson from Old Dominion to potentially be his backup. Alberto Mendoza is also with the program. So you have guys that could potentially step in if needed. But it's clear that Fernando Mendoza is your starter. He is going to be the guy for this team. And how he plays dictates how successful this offense will be. Now, I will say the one thing that is very helpful is that the rushing attack should have the potential to be better than it was last year. And there were some exciting players in last year's team as well, but you lose some of them. So you go out and you get Roman Hemby, who didn't have the best numbers at Maryland, but Maryland didn't exactly have the best season. He had 607 yards on the ground with 6 touchdowns. He also caught 40 passes for 273 yards and 1 more score. He is going to be a really fun player to watch in this offense, especially what they have coming back on the offensive line. You also return Kalen Black. That's a former JMU transfer. He is back for another year. Lee Beebe comes in from UAB, had 884 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2024. He also caught 30 passes for 219 yards and another score. So your top 3 guys, I think, are solid. You have guys that are going to make plays, guys that are going to be able to really work as a committee. Even if Hemby is the starter, is RB1, I think Black and Beebe are going to see plenty of time. They're going to get plenty of touches, and that's going to keep everybody healthy. If they're going to make another run, if they want to surprise the Big Ten again, they need a healthy stable of running backs. They have to be able to move the ball on the ground, and they have to be able to complement what Fernando Mendoza and that passing attack are capable of doing. Now, bringing a new quarterback may spark some concerns, but with the wide receiver talent you have coming back, that almost kind of erases those concerns. Elijah Surratt could have gone pro last year. There is no reason why he couldn't have tried going to the NFL, but he decided to come back to Indiana for another year. And it's hard to blame him. With how much fun last year was and how successful he was, why not do it again? And he probably could improve his draft stock too. He wasn't probably going to be a first rounder last year, so maybe he gets to improve him whatever grade he was going to get. Maybe he's able to improve that by a round or two, depending on where he was at. But this is a third-team All Big Ten wide receiver, nearly had 1,000 yards, averaged 18.1 yards per catch, and had 8 touchdowns. He is a big-time threat, has the frame to be able to make some big catches, stretch the field vertically, and open up the field for the other receivers that are going to thrive with him in this offense. Now, another guy that kind of came out of nowhere was Omar Cooper Jr. Only caught 28 passes last year, but turned that into 594 yards, which is good for 21.2 yards per catch, and had 7 touchdowns. That's a good tandem for a lot of programs, and Indiana is very excited about what they can do together, because you cannot afford to send too many resources, too many defenders to one or the other, because you're going to get torched by the other guy. You also bring in Mekhi Jackson and Jonathan Brady. Those are wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4 that could have a massive impact with teams trying to take Surratt and Cooper away. You just can't afford to defend this passing attack as well as you might think, and that is going to be great for Fernando Mendoza. Now, say that they do. Say they try to take Surratt and Cooper away, and they say anybody else can beat us besides those 2 guys. Mekhi Jackson averaged over 16 yards per catch at App State. Now, playing the Big Ten is more difficult than playing in the Sun Belt. That is not going to be a question. But can you take your game to the next level? He's going to see a lot of opportunities to make plays. He is going to get matched up with some favorable matchups. He is going to have some defenders that maybe aren't the best, and he's going to get to show what he can do. Now, maybe Jonathan Brady is that guy. That's another great transfer that they bring in, and Mendoza is very familiar with Jonathan Brady. Former teammates should be able to connect quite a bit, so I could see him being a big part of this offense right off the bat. He has familiarity with how Mendoza throws the football. He knows where he's going to place it, and he knows what routes he needs to run and the details of the routes to be able to get open and complete the pass. Other guys that could step up, you have a young freshman in Davion Chandler EJ Williams Jr. is back for another year, but we're kind of waiting to see if he's going to step his game up. Has all the talent. He can be explosive. We just haven't seen it from him. So you're kind of waiting to see if he's able to take that step. Behind those guys is a bunch of younger guys. Now, you do have a LeBron on this team, LeBron Bond, which is just crazy to see that name. I think we're going to see a lot more of that name going forward with what LeBron James has done in sports. And he's a basketball player, but that's the impact that he's had. But you have young players that come to this Indiana program that they come to the program with excitement. It's not just, hey, this is a bad team, I can get on the field right away. This is a team with a very different culture, a very different outlook, and young players are excited to come here. Now, the wide receiver position is set. The tight end position is a little bit more uncertain, but there are some really interesting names that you should know. Holden Stays comes in from Tennessee, caught 15 passes for them, 131 yards and 1 touchdown. This offense should utilize the tight end a little bit more than Tennessee does. You also bring in Riley Nowakowski from Wisconsin. James Bamba returns from this team. So you have a trio of tight ends that maybe don't have the greatest production as pass catchers, but I think that they're going to get more opportunities to show what they can do in Indiana's offense than their previous offenses that they played in. So with everyone focusing on the wide receivers and everyone kind of maybe glossing over these tight ends, you feel like you have players that can step up, that can balance out this offense quite a bit. And things up front are really good, and they should be the same in 2025. Now, you do have 2 new starters. Pat Coogan comes in from Notre Dame, has 30 games of experience, including 26 starts. He played in all 16 games last year for the Irish. He started 13 of them. That's a veteran player that's going to have to work things out with Mendoza in terms of snaps, calls, all that kind of stuff. But that's a veteran player who knows a thing or two that can get up to speed pretty quick. If you can play at Notre Dame, you're probably going to be able to play at a lot of other places, purely from a mental perspective. You also bring in Khalil Benson from Colorado. 33 games of experience for him. Only started 4 games last year, so he was obviously looking for a different opportunity. Finds it with Indiana. He'll have to fight off Zen Michalski from Ohio State. That's a guy who has experience. Another guy that was looking for a better opportunity. Played in 29 games with the Buckeyes, but never really got a full shot at being a starter. Now he has an opportunity to compete for that. Opposite of them, Carter Smith returns after an honorable mention all Big Ten year and started all 13 games for this team. Drew Evans, if he didn't get hurt, would have started the entire year as well. 9 starts for him in 2024. And the final one we'll talk about is Bray Lynch. Started all 13 games for this team. So this is an experienced, a talented, and a veteran group up front that is going to be really fun to watch. Behind them, you don't have as much experience, but right now you feel really good about the situation with your starters. You feel really good, even with 2 new transfers coming in, that this offensive line is going to be a strength of this offense. And the skill positions might need time to gel with each other, to get some chemistry, but this offensive line should be a really good group that can give those skill positions time to figure that out. They'll give the running backs room to run. They'll give Fernando Mendoza or whoever's playing quarterback time to throw. That's a really exciting situation that 2 years ago you didn't have. This is an offensive line that had 1 or 2 guys that you thought, okay, this guy's really good. If they can kind of just take care of their business, maybe the other guys will be able to handle things collectively. Now you feel very different. You feel like you have 5 guys that will be really good in 2025, and that's going to help this offense tremendously. Now, the defense is where you see some surprises. I think a lot of people expected Mikal Kamara, Aiden Fisher, and D'Angelo Pons to potentially take their talents elsewhere, whether that's the NFL, maybe even the transfer portal. The nice thing is that Curt Cignetti gave them their start. He's the reason why they went to James Madison. He is the reason why they came to Indiana. So I see why they have the loyalty. In a day and age where people question loyalty, that trio has shown that and it's not just them too. There are other James Madison transfers that came in that are staying as well. This is a trio that all three of them are first team all Big Ten selections. Could they have gone elsewhere for money? Could they have gone to a bigger program? Absolutely. But they come back, and they're a big reason why each level of this defense is in good hands. Kamara is a little bit on undersized side of things. He is not going to be the biggest defensive end by any means, but he is productive. You don't just get a first team all Big Ten selection for just being good. You have to be great. 47 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 10 sacks. That's phenomenal. That is a guy who was taking it to whoever he faced and made sure that this defense, even if it didn't have the 4 and 5 star talent, was an absolute problem for the teams that they face. We talked about Wheeler before on the inside. Tyreek Tucker is another James Madison guy. Again, probably could have gone into the transfer portal. Maybe he could have gone to a bigger school, but instead he waits his turn. He sits behind CJ West and James Carpenter, and now he has an opportunity to take an even bigger step. And he was still part of the rotation. 24 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. He is someone who is, again, kind of like Mendoza. I think we're just seeing the surface of what he's capable of doing. Opposite of Kamara, Kellen Wyatt comes in to potentially be another disruptive defensive end for this defense. 30 tackles last year, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. I'm really excited to see what he can do opposite of a guy in Mikhail Kamara who's going to command a ton of attention. Teams are going to have to figure out how to slow him down, which gives Wyatt plenty of opportunities to showcase his talent. Now, behind them, you maybe are trying to figure out who's going to be the next 2 guys up. Stephen Daly comes in from Kent State. Productive year for the Golden Flashes. 51 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Can you do that at Indiana versus in the MAC, on the worst team in college football? That's a big question for him. But he's productive, and he didn't really have a ton of help. So it makes you think that he's going to be able to figure it out. Daniel Dukwe could be another guy. Quentin Clark. Those are younger players that are looking to take a step into that rotation, and there are openings, especially on the edge. Mario Ladino is 9 tackles last year, 2 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble. Dominic Ratcliffe comes in from Texas State. Pretty productive year for the Bobcats last year. 22 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. After that, kind of the same thing as the ends. You have some inexperienced players, but players that are excited to showcase what they can do once they get on the field. The linebacker position, we talked about Aiden Fisher, a huge year for him. 118 tackles, 6 tackles for loss. He is someone that, again, when you transfer from a group of 5 school, the first question that everybody has, and it's a legitimate question, is how are you going to be able to translate your game to the Power 4, to the Big Ten? The Big Ten is one of the most physical conferences in college football. And Aiden Fisher really didn't bat an eye at it. He found a way to be competitive. He found a way to insert himself. And he is a big reason why this team should be good once again. Elijah Hardy comes into a new role this year. 22 tackles for him, 6 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions. He is going to get a lot of exciting opportunities because everybody knows who Aiden Fisher is. Not as many people are going to know who he is. So he's going to get a chance to remind everyone that he can play and that he can slow things down for the opposing offense. Behind them, PJ Nelson's an exciting freshman that could play a role. You also have Jeff Utzinger that is kind of part of that as well. Isaiah Jones, though, is the name that should be that third linebacker that gets into the rotation. 42 tackles, 4 tackles for loss last year. The linebacker position feels like it's set. Even if you don't have an experienced 4th option, you do have some young talent that saw what it takes last year. And I think it was a mindset shift for this team. This was a team that you look at 2 years ago, there was really no hope with this program. They were going nowhere fast. And Curt Cignetti came in, just threw a grenade and everything, and decided we're going to just completely reshape this program into a winner. And the guys he brings in are a big reason why. And this defense played lights out at times. Now, you could make an argument that the schedule had something to do with that, but it's still the Big Ten. You still had to play at a certain level, and what Indiana did last year is an attribute to the defensive line, the linebackers behind them, and then the secondary is really where I think you saw a lot of exciting things as well. Now you do lose some key players, but you get D'Angelo Pons back. Now D'Angelo Pons is not by any means the biggest corner that you will see. He's on the underside side of things, just like Kamara is up front. But that doesn't matter. He found ways to be successful. He found ways to slow people down. And he was a really fun player to watch in 2024. Opposite of him, Jamari Sharp is going to get plenty of opportunities to show the coaching staff that he can be the starter. Maybe Rylan Gandy from Pitt is going to be another option. Marion Knighton from Northern Illinois. Those are guys that are going to get opportunities because teams are still going to challenge D'Angelo Pons. They know he's a good player, but his size is purely the reason why they're going to test him. Now, a lot of times it's not going to go well, but if you're like an Ohio State and you have Jeremiah Smith, I mean, even Kurt Cignetti would take that matchup 10 times out of 10. But D'Angelo Pons is going to win some of those matchups. He's one of those sneaky good players that even if he doesn't have the size advantage, he understands what to do when the ball's in the air, and he's going to make plays. The safety position is really interesting. You bring in Lewis Moore from Ole Miss. You have Amari Farrell, who picked off 4 passes last year. He's really good as well. Bryson Bonds is back. And then at the nickel position, getting Devin Boykin, I think, is a slept-on addition via the transfer portal. He picked off 3 passes last year for the Wolfpack, and that's a guy who can slide into corner. You could maybe put him at safety. He can play the nickel. He gives you some versatility if you need it. But that was an addition that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, and that's a really exciting player to get if you're Indiana, especially with some of the goals you have in 2025. Being really good against the pass is going to be pivotal for this defense, and having a guy like Boykin is not a bad addition to get, especially when he probably could have gone to a number of schools. Now, winning those football games will be tougher, and the schedule is going to be slightly more difficult than it was last year. The other part of it is that you don't have the element of surprise. And not that team is, towards the end of the season, people knew what Indiana was. They knew that they were a good team and they had to take them seriously. So it wasn't like they were slept on. But the first half of the season, I think a lot of people were just stunned at how good this team was. Now, the first 3 games, you should still be 3-0. Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. You should be 3-0 heading into the Illinois game. The Illinois game is going to be a big one for both programs. Both teams are looking to get to the college football playoff in 2025, and this one could dictate the momentum either program has. After that, you go to Iowa. That is a tough road test for this team. And 2 weeks later, you have to go to Oregon. That's a program that is definitely a tier above Indiana, but that's a good measuring stick for where this program is compared to where they have to go. We saw what happened in the playoff last year. We kind of got a good idea of where that program was in 2024. Can we see a step forward in 2025? That's a big one to showcase there. Michigan State and UCLA at home after that. You go to Maryland and Penn State. The Penn State game is another tough test. The road games are really, honestly, not great. Now, the Maryland game and the Purdue game at the end of the year, not as much, but your toughest games are on the road. And that's a great opportunity for this program to show, at least this team, to show that, hey, we're okay with that. We can handle that adversity. We can handle big games, even if it's on the road. Winning those games is going to be tough. And winning another 11 games in 2025 is probably not happening. Honestly, I think that the ceiling for this team this year is 10-2. I think that between Illinois, Iowa, Oregon, Penn State, you will be lucky to lose 2 or less, to lose 2 games. You might lose more than that. But if they play as well as they can, this is another double-digit win team, I think. I think 10-2 is definitely a possibility. Now, the floor has, the ceiling obviously went really high, but the floor also came up as well. And I think that's an important thing to note. This is an Indiana team that you look at when Michael Penix Jr. was on campus. There was times where Indiana had a high ceiling year, but then they went right back down to their floor, which is 2, 3, 4 wins. I think the floor has elevated because of Cignetti and this coaching staff, which means that you're now at the floor, maybe losing, or you're only winning 5 or 6 games at a minimum. So that's really exciting as well. You at least stabilize some of your program production. You've stabilized the roller coaster a little bit, if you will. And that's really exciting as well. But this is a team that wants to get back to the college football playoff. They're looking to surprise people once again. And we have plenty of opportunities to see if that is going to be the case this year, just like it was in 2024.